Hey guys, so the topic this week is injuries, and to put it bluntly, I'm a klutz. So growing up, I got into a lot of accidents. Like, I found ways to hurt myself a lot without really intending to find out ways to hurt myself. And there are quite a few stories I could tell, but I'm gonna stick to one after I list some of the injuries that I have experienced in my life. So to start, I have to phrase this one right, because if I don't, it sounds worse than it was. I split the skin open on my skull twice. Like, I never broke bone or fractured my skull, but I split the skin open on my head twice. One time which required me to have like a hat and I think like a special bandage. I don't know if I ever got stitches for it for like a month when I was in kindergarten. And another time in which it wasn't my fault and it was a lot more minor. But I had that happen. So yeah, I split the skin open on my skull twice. I broke my wrist in first grade. I got 7 stitches when I was 7, which I thought was funny when I thought about it, because 7 stitches when I was 7, of course, 7 stitches when I was 7. I have gotten multiple, I've like sprained my wrist and like the ordinary bruises that you get most of the time just growing up from being like kind of sportsy and being a kid and doing things. I burnt myself the first time I made mac and cheese. I have gotten stung by a jellyfish. I've gotten stung by a bee, but that one was more recent and I kind of didn't really care about it that much. Thankfully, I'm not allergic or anything, so I didn't have to worry about it that much. I've had a surgery near my eye. You guys can't see the scar because I used a really good scar cream, and it's really kind of minor. It's like right here. I would go in closer, but I don't know if it would help. If I ever met any of you guys in person, you'd probably be able to see it if you looked hard enough. But the one I want to talk about is one that tends to get noticed by a lot of my friends when I stop wearing a lot of jackets, because it's way too hot for me to even possibly think wearing a jacket's conceivable in outdoor weather. So I'm just going to show you the scar real quick. I have to scoot up, I think, a little bit to show you guys. That's the scar I'm talking about. That's the story I'm going to tell you guys of how I got that scar and almost lost use of my right hand. So what happened was, it was the first night of 6th grade. I had my first day of school. I was home. Everybody was getting ready to go to bed, and I was doing dishes because that was my chore. Still is my chore, by the way, so this did not prevent me from doing dishes anymore. Though everyone's like, you have a solid excuse to never do dishes again. And I was like, yeah, it just doesn't work. So I was doing dishes, and it wasn't a knife. I know, it wasn't any utensil. It wasn't a plate. It wasn't a bowl. It was a glass, like a drinking glass, like a normal just round drinking glass. And I don't know if it was just like too wet or my hands were too wet. And it was like one of the last dishes too, which made it even better. In my house, I have one of those double sinks in which like you have, instead of just having one huge open sink, there's like the little part in the middle that divides it. And it had like, around my sink had a rim for the rest of the counter that it went out to. As far as I was aware of what happened as it happened was that the glass had slipped out of my hand and fallen out of the sink and onto the floor and broken. And it happened like in a matter of seconds. It literally happened too fast. Like, it was out of my hand, and next thing I know, I heard the crash, and there was broken glass on the floor. My mom asked what happened, and so did my brother. I was just like, oh, I just broke a glass, I'll clean it up. And they were like, oh, okay. And I turned off the sink because the water was still running. I was going to start to pick up the glass when I heard a drip. And I looked at the sink, and the sink wasn't dripping at all. And so I didn't know where the drip came from. And I'm like, oh, well, I must have just heard something. And I looked down to start picking up the glass. And that's when I realized I see a small drop of red. And I was like, oh, I must have cut myself. Like, I guess when it broke, like, I must have cut myself or something. Let me check. And so, like, I'm looking at my hands and I don't see anything. Like, I don't see any visible scratches or anything. And then I look at my arm and, like, I kind of did the whole that thing. And I was instantly mortified because instead of seeing like, you know, a kind of deep gash, what I saw was 2 walls of flesh, like yellowy on the inside, and I saw the end of where like the normal tissue ends in your skin, and then like a wall of red behind it. And this, I think, was around the time of Sweeney Todd, the movie, and I'd seen like the previews or like the clips where you see all of a sudden all the like the cut and then all the blood just drains out. That was immediately what I thought was gonna happen to my arm, and I thought I was gonna die. And so I went to my mom, who was just like down the hall getting ready for bed, and I'm like, Mom. Thankfully, my mom is a nurse, so I'm glad I have her in my life. And she started freaking out, and she didn't understand how it happened, and I didn't understand how it happened. And what we kind of theorized happened after like everything was taken care of was that like after the glass had slipped out of my hand, it hit the rim of the sink and broke, and that's when it started to fall outside of the sink. But the bottom half, which stayed mostly intact as compared to the rest of the glass, had bounced up and sliced me and then fell to the ground and broke again. Yeah, that was terrifying, and it happened fast enough that I didn't feel a thing. So I wasn't in pain or anything. I was just bleeding and thinking I was gonna die. I'm sitting there freaking out. My mom's kind of slightly freaking out, but at the same time getting everything she needs to have it so I hold my arm and I can stop the bleeding. And then my brother came to check up because like my brother had asked like what had happened, and then I think he kind of heard me freaking out and my mom, and he came in and he calmed me down by doing math, which at the time I kind of wanted to yell at him for it, and I kind of actually did and be like, why are you having me do math problems? Like, I am bleeding out of my arm and I might die. Why are you having me do math? Of course I didn't tell him I thought I might die, but I'm like, I was just like freaking out. I'm like, why are you having me do math? He's like, don't ask me, just do it. And I really appreciated that because him having me do math kept me from focusing on the fact that I was bleeding out of my arm and actually got me to calm down. And then we had the ER visit, and I got 39 stitches, I believe it was 39. I had 24 on the outside and 15 on the inside of the dissolvable kind. The doctor called me a magician because I was like a centimeter or 2 away from cutting my tendon, which would have made me have to learn how to use my left hand because I wouldn't be able to use my right hand anymore. But thankfully I didn't, and I still get to use my lovely right hand. If there was any one good thing that came out of like me having all of these kinds of injuries, is that I have a higher than normal pain tolerance. It may not always seem like it, but I do. Like when I got stung by the bee, most people were like actually in a lot of pain from it. And like you have to take out the stinger right away because because of the toxins and the bee sting and everything. So I'd taken it out. I put a little ice and I was like, it kind of felt like a pinch to me, and that was about it. Kind of like felt almost like getting a shot, except without the residual pain. Yeah, I was just like, okay, that happened. And like when I got stung by the jellyfish, it was kind of like an annoying, slightly painful tickle. Nothing too bothersome to me. I also have some better reflexes at catching things, though that doesn't mean I don't drop things anymore. I still do. Like, actually have some fun with it, or at least I think of it as fun after I catch whatever I almost dropped, in which, like, I'm sitting there and I'm, like, tossing, and it's, like, fumbling in the air, and then I manage to catch it still, and I'm like, ha! Still caught it. That's awesome. And, like, just things like that. More often than not now, I'll if I get a bruise somewhere like on my arm or on my leg from like walking into something, unless like it was like a particularly jolted thing where like half of my body hit it, or like I just hit something really big and really hard, I don't really notice. So I get like random small bruises occasionally because like I kind of brushed up against the wall and that was it. I mean, I have also full-on walked into light poles and like the basketball pole for the hoop a couple of times in my life, like just straight on, like full face into it. One time I had been walking backwards and then I turned around, but I didn't realize when I was turning around that my next step would get me into a pole. Another time was I was looking kind of sideways and I thought I was farther on the sidewalk than I was, and then I just kind of did it, and it was more embarrassing because I heard the ding of the entire light pole when I hit it, and I just kept walking. Like I said, kind of accident prone, but also kind of a ninja with some new like reflexes and slightly higher pain tolerance than most girls have. So that's what came out of my life like that. But that's it for me this week, guys. So until next time, see ya.